Spoken a lot about how religion creates narcissistic fathers, but today I want to talk about how religion creates pick-me mothers, because unfortunately, the two go hand in hand. If you have a narcissistic, abusive, religious father, you probably have a pick-me enabler religious mother. First, the most obvious sign is that she prefers her sons over her daughters. A lot of pick-me women are very male-centered because they genuinely want male validation. And this shows up in the form of them prioritizing their sons' wants and needs and giving their sons more freedom over their daughters, because they view their daughters as competition and they view their sons as a potential love interest. This is called covert incest. But when you sprinkle in religion, what happens to the daughters is that they are forced to cover up more, because a pick-me religious mother is gonna view any man that looks at her daughter as competition for her also, even if the man is years younger than her, even if the man is not her type. So what she's gonna do is she's gonna shame her daughter into covering up and actually force her to not appeal to men so that her daughter doesn't get male attention and so that her security is not threatened. This also means that if a predator assaults you as a young girl, your mother is very likely to do absolutely nothing about that. In fact, she might actually enable your predator and blame you and insult you and say you're damaged goods and say nobody's going to want you and say you're going to hell and all this other horrible stuff. Why? Because again, she's male-centered, so she doesn't care that her daughter got violated. She cares that a man pursued her daughter. That's what's more important to her, rather than the fact that her daughter is actually abused and now traumatized. Another thing about pick-me mothers is that they view their children as a burden the same way narcissistic, abusive, religious fathers do. Because a lot of the time, these pick-me mothers don't even actually want kids. They just want to do what they think God wants them to do, which is get married and have kids. So they get married and they have kids so that everyone will look at her and be like, oh, you're such a good woman. You're such a good mother. God is going to reward you for all this hard work. But in actuality, she's not protecting her kids, she's not teaching her kids, she's not providing security or love to her kids, and she generally treats them like they're irrelevant. On top of that, having kids for a pick-me religious mother is what keeps a man around, right? Because in religion, men are not supposed to abandon their families or their children. So if a woman has kids with a man, then under the guise of religion, that man has to stay with her to provide for the children, right? So this is another way that pick-me religious mothers center men over their own children, because if that man is a narcissist and abusive and using religion to control everyone in the household, guess who's enabling him? The pick-me religious mother. Why? Because all she cares about is having a man. So what ends up happening is all the abuse that your pick-me mother is going to endure through being married to your narcissistic, abusive father is going to be thrown on you as a child. She's going to come to you and vent to you about her problems and complain about him to you and make all these plans that she's going to leave him and whatever, but she's never actually going to follow through on any of those because she doesn't actually want to leave the man. She just wants to feel like a victim. The reason why she wants to feel like a victim is because it gives her a sense of importance. It gives her an identity. Religious pick-me women believe in sacrifice, believe in victimhood, because they think these are things that God is going to reward them for. But on a day-to-day level, these are very unbearable things to go through. So they have to offload this burden onto their children. So their children often end up being used as pawns for either having her back over your dad's back, or validating her emotions and feelings at the expense of you having emotions and feelings, withholding her love if you choose to tell her, like, you're wrong, you should leave, this is not what you're supposed to be doing, God doesn't actually want this, and all that other stuff. And she might actually triangulate you with your narcissistic, abusive dad if she feels like it. Because even though these women use their children as therapists, they don't hesitate to throw their children under the bus if she wants to win the approval of her husband. So at one point, she might actually snitch on you to your dad and tell your dad that you said this or you said that about him, just to create drama so that your dad has her back instead of having your back. All of these toxic family dynamics regularly cause tension between the girl children in the family and the boy children in the family. A lot of girl children are not only victims of abuse from their pick-me mothers, but also from their brothers, who have a superiority complex because they don't actually understand what's going on yet. They just see that their mothers prefer them over their sisters. So they start resenting their sisters. So they hate their sisters. They bully their sisters. They snitch on their sisters. They get their sisters involved in situations just so they can be like, see, she's bad. She's a hoe. oh, she's this, she's that. And it enables these abusive tendencies a lot more. Lastly, pick-me women who are religious will most often try to marry off their daughters to someone who is physically unattractive, financially unstable, and emotionally absent, because they want their daughters to experience the same level of abuse that they experience by being married to a narcissistic religious man. This is incredibly sad because a lot of girls don't even realize what's happening until it's too late, and they're being sold this idea that having a husband and being married is freedom. So they do it. They get married to this guy. Sometimes they don't even have a say, right? They just get married against their will to this guy, and they repeat the life of their mother, because they don't know how to break the cycle. They didn't have a chance to break the cycle, and nobody taught them how to break the cycle. So if you have a pick-me religious mother like this, I advise you to go no contact. I do. A pick-me religious mother will always insert herself in your relationships with a man in order to step on you, essentially squash you down into nothing. Even if she doesn't want your man, she's gonna do that just because she needs the validation of a man. And we know that most men will take the opportunity to pile on the abuse that a woman is facing, especially if it's coming from her mother. They're very rarely gonna be the ones to be like, oh, your mother is kind of a pick-me, you should stop talking to her. In fact, a lot of the men who end up marrying women like this actually point out the fact that her mother doesn't even love her unconditionally. Her mother doesn't even support her. Her mother doesn't even have her back. Her mother likes him more than she likes her own daughter. Religion creates this dynamic because it tells women that they are less than a man. And when you have an inferiority complex, you do look to men to validate your existence. This shows up as abuse. Because when you don't know how to validate yourself, you're gonna tear down every woman who gets validation from a man, even if that woman is your own daughter.